Right, it's 2 o'clock. Let's make a start. So let me begin by welcoming those members of the public and the press who are watching on the live stream of this meeting via the Fire Services YouTube page. The Fire Authority allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please do feel free to take pictures and tweet during the meeting if you wish. Can I ask, though, that everyone present turns their mobile phones to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place? For information, there is no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting and we will all make our way out via the nearest available fire exits, and they are marked. The muster point is in the car park to the rear of the building. Thank you. Let us move to the first item of business.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. If we can look at agenda item 1, please, and that's election of chair. So can I take any nominations, please? Councillor Jamil.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that nomination? Thank you.
Happy to second.
And are there any other nominations for chair? No other nominations. Can we have a vote, please, of all those in favour? And all those against? And abstentions, please. With that vote, I can confirm that Councillor Murphy has been elected as Chair of the Fire Authority. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Can we move to the second item, please? Election of Vice Chair. Who would? Yes, do we have nominations, please?
Yes, Chair, and congratulations on your reappointment. I'd like to propose that Councillor Mohammed Jamil be Vice Chair for the forthcoming year.
Thank you. Seconder? Thank you. That's Bryony. Do we have any other nominations? So can we please have a vote? Those in favour? Those against? Those abstaining? Thank you very much. I hereby state that congratulate Councillor Jamil on his election to be Vice Chair for the forthcoming year. Are there any apologies for absence and declarations of interest?
We have apologies from Councillors Gardner, Gowing and Reynolds.
Thank you. And any declarations of interest? No? Thank you very much. So we will move to the minutes of the Fire Authority meeting held on the 10th of February. First of all, can I check, does everyone agree that these are a correct record? Thank you. Can I go through, because there are a couple of actions, please, to follow up. 24.24, there was an action to follow up with members of Parliament to make our case for funding. And I can report that with assistance from the officers, I have written to all our local MPs and chase them. I have met with Daniel Zeichner, who has written to Lucy Fraser on our behalf. And Lucy Fraser's office has been in contact requesting further information about our situation and pressures. I've also discussed the situation with Councillor Reynolds in some detail, as he has experience in the past of discussing these sort of matters with our local parliamentarians. We haven't had any concrete feedback other than interest and understanding, but that's a positive step as far as I can see. Yes.
If I may ask a question, have we actually had a response from all of Cambridgeshire's members of Parliament?
We haven't had a response from every member. And I can provide details after the meeting when I will collect the information and send it to members. There were a couple of other action points. Point 25 and 26, there were both actions for the Oversight and Scrutiny Committee to consider the budget process to incorporate review by Oversight and Scrutiny, and 26 to consider a member-led review. And I just wonder, could I ask what progress has been made on those points?
Thank you, Chair. As yet, none, but both items are programmed. It's a bit early for the budget process.
Thank you. And indeed, the minutes, the actions did specify that effort should be put into programming these activities for oversight and scrutiny. So thank you very much for that. Are there any other points from the minutes that needed discussion or any actions that anyone saw? No? Thank you. So we'll record those as a correct record and noting those actions. So if we could turn to, please, item 6, the annual review of the Integrated Risk Management Plan performance. We're being asked to note this and ask for any points of clarification or information. So John, sorry.
I just wondered, Chair, if you had any announcements to make.
Thank you very much indeed. Of course, I do have some announcements to make. And thank you very much indeed for reminding me. Very observant. Chair's announcements. So these have not yet been published, so I will read it out. Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to formally welcome Councillor Michael Atkins to the authority and thank Councillor Peter MacDonald, whom he replaces, for his contributions to our work during his tenure. I hope that many members were able to visit the site at St John's this morning, and I'm sure you would be impressed by the progress being made to ensure the service has a future-proofed, state-of-the-art fire and rescue community station and training facility. Another visit for authority members will be scheduled in due course. It is anticipated that the building work will be completed in late 2022, with occupation by staff expected by early 2023. So a polite reminder, please, the Accounting Code of Practice, this is for members, requires the authority to disclose the accounts of any given financial year, any payments made by the authority to related parties. This term includes those who have served as members or senior officers of the authority and their immediate families and any businesses owned or controlled by them or their immediate families. This is an important document, and there are currently, or at point of writing, there were 6 outstanding from members of the authority. If you have a form to fill out, please hand them in today if you can, or speak to me about it. The Home Office open consultation and the authority response. So members will be aware that the long-awaited Home Office open consultation seeking views on proposals to introduce system-wide reform that will strengthen fire and rescue services in England recently went live. The government says it wants to ensure that fire and rescue services are given the tools and support to tackle the ever-changing challenges that communities face, and the reform is explained in 3 sections: people, professionalism, and governance. I strongly believe not only that the authority, as well as the service, should respond, but also that the authority response should represent all members' views on the questions posed. There are 48 questions posed. I sent an email early last week asking for your input, and I would like to take this opportunity to urge you all to respond fully or partially by the requested date, if at all possible. I attended the LGA Fire Commission meeting last Friday on your behalf, and this was a very interesting meeting where it will come as no surprise to learn that the fire service reforms was hotly debated. It had almost universal condemnation, I should say, of the key governance proposals. These effectively mean that the fire services, fire authorities, and they come in many forms, would become part of the combined authority of the mayoral functions. And the line that, and it was an all-party thing that everyone took, was, you know, it's not broken, so we don't need to fix it in this anyway, is a solution looking for a problem. And there's no indication of how it would be paid for. It would clearly be an expensive exercise. However, there were many positive elements of the proposals which we were happy to support, and that related to the fire college. And there were many workforce measures supporting diversity and inclusion and so on, and career paths that were very welcomed. So the LGA is working up 2 alternative proposals, ultimately to try to lobby government with, and both proposals seek to leave the final decision on whether to merge with the combined authority with local residents in one way or another. I have to say the Home Office official who was present at the event indicated that would kick off a process. We inquired what process it was, and the process was that the Home Office would consider the arguments and then propose merger. So, you know, we're in quite a difficult position, but there is very little work that's been done on the cost. There would undoubtedly be an enormous amount of cost for the sector with no particular gain in quality. It was pointed out that the inspection service or the inspection regime is very significant and taken very, very seriously, and is doing the job of addressing quality issues. So there isn't really a need for the governance proposals as they were. So we will have more information from that. But again, the message from the LGA was please make your opinions known and respond to the consultation. The final point on my announcements is the LGA annual conference and exhibition. So for the first time in 3 years, the LGA will be hosting the biggest event in the local government calendar, their annual conference and exhibition. It'll be in person, first time for a long time. And our newly re-elected Vice Chair, Councillor Jamil, is attending on our behalf, and we look forward to hearing from him about any highlights from the event. Thank you. So now I believe we can move, unless there are any questions. So now I believe we can move to the annual review of the Integrated Risk Management Plan and Performance, which, as I said, we are asked to note. John can present it, but please assume that we have all read it, and then we can ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. First of all, I'd like to just highlight a few areas of work that we've been doing over the last 12 months, and then I'll talk you through the end of year performance report. And as the Chair said, I'm more than happy to take any questions you may have. So to start off with some of the work we're doing around our people in terms of how we support them and how we develop their future leaders. So this year we've welcomed a new mental health and wellbeing advisor into the service, and that's part of our commitment to looking after our staff in a proactive way to make sure that their mental health is as good as it can be. We're also doing a lot of work around developing our staff and preparing them for future roles and any opportunities that may be arising. So we're building leadership and management skills for the future, strengthening opportunities for staff to be responsible for their own learning and development. We also continue to embed and understand the value of quality conversations across all staff and strengthening the ways which we understand our succession planning. In terms of community safety, we're continuing to make sure that we target all of our resources at the most vulnerable in society. We have a new collaboration with Anglia Water, which has produced a high number of referrals to help us do that targeting work, and we're looking for further collaborations with other utility providers to help us, again, continue to target the most vulnerable in our societies. There's also been a lot of work falling out from the Grenfell fire to make sure our protection area is as good as it can be, and that we're making people safe in areas where they live and work. We're also doing a lot of work around our on-call crews. We know that's a continuing area where we experience challenges, but we're trying to make it as good as it can be. We are expanding our co-responding offer to East, which will help them with the challenges they're facing at the moment. We've also removed 135 ladders from appliances, which will enable them to better focus their limited training time on what's really important. And we've moved to Camborne Fire Station, which is a new, well, it's not a new station, but it's a new operational station for us with very good training facilities and better facilities than we had at our previous Papworth station. So we see that as a positive development. We're also continuing to work on delivering a new mobilising technology into the service. I'll now move on to talking about our end of year performance report. You'll see from the report we've included the 5-year view of our performance, following requests from members, and also I think it gives a better indication of exactly where our performance is rather than just comparing one year to another. So I'll talk to it about it on that basis. So in terms, starting off with our attendance times to urban calls, which are targets within 9 minutes. As you'll see, that continues to head in a very positive direction over the 5 years, and in the last year it is at 736, which is considerably under our target and is good performance. And you will see, although it's small numbers, there is a trend in the right direction on that performance measure. With rural attendance times, the target's 12 minutes. We are still slightly over that at 12:14. That is still an incredibly challenging target for us with the nature of the county we serve with the large rural areas, and we're still having particular issues around non-addressable locations, which is making that target rather hard to achieve, but we're continuing to focus and work on that. And all instances within 18 minutes on 95% of occasions, we are exceeding that target, and consistently we've been heading in the right direction there, and we are above target, which is good. In terms of total fires, it has increased on last year, but you'll see over the 5 years, it's actually not in a bad place. It's in terms of rolling 5-year trend, we're about 9% down now. Last year was particularly low due to COVID. It wasn't a normal year. And I think that highlights the benefit of looking over a longer period of time to understand exactly how we're performing. Primary fires, we're over the 5 years, we are definitely down on primary fires, but again, slightly up on last year. And secondary fires, so it's round, not too far away from where we are generally. It's above last year again with COVID, but it's lower than some other years in the last 5 years. So fire deaths, unfortunately, we've had five fatalities in the last year. That was the same as the year before, but above the previous 3 years. 3 were in dwellings and 2 occurred on road vehicles. Obviously, we're making sure that we look to learn as much as we can from those and support the communities that are involved in them. In terms of fire casualties, that is relatively stable in terms of where we've been for 4 out of the last 3 years. Road traffic collisions, this is higher than previous years, but lower than the rolling 5 years. Again, I think COVID will have played into that. And killed and seriously injured on the roads. Again, it's up on last year, but it's below where we have been for the other years. Special service incidents, this is a particular area of interest actually. That's up 37% on the rolling 5 years. And a lot of that is around supporting other agencies. And I mean, some of it is in terms of we've expanded our capabilities in terms of what we can do, but it's also a sign of the pressure that's on some of our partner agencies, particularly the ambulance service. In terms of diversity, 11.3% of applicants were for Black and ethnic minority communities, 8.3% of on-call applicants and 15.7% of support applicants. Unfortunately, this does not translate through to percentage of new recruits into the service who are from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds, and we're working to identify specifically with our recruitment process where the barriers are and continue to try to address that. 29.1% of all applicants were female, 15% of on-call applicants were female, and this led to 15% of new on-call recruits also being female as well. So we're definitely making progress in that area. I think I'll leave talking through it there. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Kinsley.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure there's going to be a question in here, but I do want to pay tribute to colleagues across the service, because the 5-year data that we asked for really does show that colleagues have put a huge quantity of work and effort into making the service better. And I think that's a fantastic job. I think we don't want to get too stuck into statistics, but of course, these figures are good, taking into account, of course, our increasing population and increased traffic on the road and so on. So that's brilliant. Well done to everybody involved in that. On page 31, you make reference to a 34% increase in colleagues working to prevent suicides, attempted suicides, as part of the special services incidents attended. And I think that is very regrettable that people are so desperate. So it really makes me very happy indeed to see on page 19 that the mental health and wellbeing advisor introduced into the service has been well received, and that there is, recognition of the mental health impacts on colleagues, firefighters particularly, and that we have taken it seriously and have done something about it other than just chat about it. So that I really commend that, and I hope that should the service recognise that A, it is extremely well received, and B, that there is more capacity, then I hope we would consider increasing that role by employing another person. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Slatter.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for an excellent report. I always find I learn stuff. I also find that I make notes at the beginning and find that you've answered it by the end on the whole, not entirely, but so similarly, I was pleased to see that you were trying in 6.6 to identify potential individuals rather than just looking at what qualifications they've got, and then you move on to work out how to help them with apprenticeships or in-service training. That's good. I was interested in work with young people, because obviously the younger we can get them and get them, really wanting to make a career, the better. I know at previous meetings you've mentioned Firebreak, and you mentioned that again here. And just one small question was, do you have links with the uniformed youth organisations? Because often the youngsters who join that sort of organisation are a good place, and you may be able to help them get their badges. I'm sure you're onto that already. In 7.1, delighted to see you're trying to do data sharing. Good luck with that. But seriously, it is so important that we know where the vulnerable are, and it isn't easy to get that information for sure. And I'm sure that if we can help us counsellors, sometimes we pick things up on the ground, especially when we're knocking on doors. And it's good to know that we can feed that in because you're already on the case. I absolutely agree with Councillor Kindersley about the importance of looking after our workforce's mental health. I'm seeing very similar things happening in the NHS, and I'm sure other councillors are, as well as in our own county council. I also get the impression that both the diversity officers and those who are concerned with health and well-being are very well networked. And I think particularly among the emergency services, nobody else can be as good at advising somebody who's dealing with trauma and having witnessed things than people who know what it's like. So thank you for that. And I support what Councillor Kindersley said about making sure the resources or partnership working that we can help with. Just a question, in 7.3, you mentioned the children and young people team. Is that part of the fire authority? And in which case I'd be quite pleased to identify them. If there were people perhaps who could answer my questions and I don't have to bring them to committee. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Do you mean name who's in that team? Is that what you're looking?
Firstly, if you're a county councillor, you see children and young people, you think of our committee, we've got one by that name. Obviously, yes. This is a team within your organisation. And is it a discrete team, or is it identified people who do other things, but they do make a point of being well informed about children and young people and their needs? How are you organising that? Because it's obviously a key way, because young people are different to older people, aren't they? And the way they think and act and respond is very different. Thank you.
Sorry, thanks for the clarification. So we have a dedicated team headed up by a station commander with children and young people officers that sit underneath that station commander that deal with water, road and children and young people all encompassing. So they cover our fire break scheme, our engagement with whether we engage with them directly, but tools and toolboxes that are available for schools, young education settings. And we've been fortunate enough recently to recruit a further person on a 2-year fixed term contract into that team that will help us with our road safety concerns that we have across the county.
That's excellent. Thank you. That's very reassuring. And we do need that expertise devoted to that very important part of your work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Maguire.
Thank you, Chairman. I hope you can hear me all right. This thing has been sounding like it's got a lot of mice in it when it's off, so I keep hearing squeaky little noises, but I think it seems to be working. First of all, can I echo the sentiments expressed by Councillor Kindersley at the start, where he said thanking the team, all the team, for both the IRMP report and the work that goes behind it. But could I specifically ask for an update, looking at paragraph 9.1, I know some members of the service won't be surprised at me asking this question with regards to the communications programme. As usual, it's not on time, there are delays behind it, and I just wondered if we could have an update and an opinion on what adverse effect if any, that it's having on our current communications, the airway system.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to take a question, Councillor. Yes, you're correct. The project continues to be delayed. They're now talking about towards the end of 2026, maybe into 2027 for delivery. In terms of our own service, Airwave continues to be a reliable service that we are using, and operation on a day-to-day basis is not causing us any issues. As a service, we've made a decision that we are going to scale back on our level of commitment to this project until they're in a position to start delivering it. We'll continue with coverage testing and what needs to be done, but we're reducing the amount of people that we're committing to the work until we're in a position to actually start delivering something.
Thank you, Chairman. Disappointing news in terms of the length of time, but not surprising to anybody who's been involved in this for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jamil.
Thank you, Chair. On 7.1, you referred to fire safety regulations of in respect of tall buildings. Following on from what happened at Grenfell, how many buildings are we talking about in Cambridgeshire? And it says here that the person responsible will give yourselves a list of or provide locations of the vulnerable people. How does that work in practice? Because I can imagine people moving, people going out. Who keeps the list? How does that work in practice?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I can attempt to answer that. So I think I brought a paper to the last authority meeting that spoke about the building safety bill that's due in next year. The Fire Safety Act has now passed and is in force. What the building safety bill is going to place an onus on the responsible person to share information about their premises with us via a data means. We're currently working on that, and we have a process that enables them to share floor plans, etc., with us. There's 20 buildings that we call in-scope buildings in Cambridgeshire that we're working with. We've been round, we've assessed them all. Our fire protection officers have been out and done that work. So we're now engaging with the responsible person to make sure that we've got all the plans and we can share them with our frontline staff through our mobile data terminals. So should we ever get an incident there, we're able to respond in the most effective way. But in essence, the new Act puts an onus on an individual a responsible person to share that information with us.
Can I ask another question?
Yes.
On the figures for diversity over the 5 years, you referred to 11.3% were from Black and ethnic minority. I understand the 8.3% for on-call applicants, but 15.7%. I can understand why some of the people may not get through, become on-call filers, but the figure of 15.7, that's a bit low as well. What are the main reasons for those? Generally, I'm not asking specific.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, we're still struggling to understand why people are not getting through. We track where people are falling out of the process, and there doesn't seem to be any particularly common themes to it. It's something we're putting a lot of resources into trying to do that, but we're not getting the return on the investment at the moment, and we're not alone in that. That seems to be a sector-wide issue, but no one has really got a grip of what the answer is, to be honest with you. But it is something we continue to explore, and we continue to work with not only other fire service but community groups. Now, obviously, COVID is taking a bit more of a back step. We can get back out and improve our engagement with communities again. That is now a part of what, the day work for firefighters on our stations as well. So it's not just we see it as everyone's job, not just people in a specialist team. So we're certainly putting the effort in, and we're hoping that over time we'll break down those barriers and start seeing improvement, but I don't think it's going to be a quick fix.
Okay.
Do we have a team that goes out to careers fairs and stuff? I know that colleges, universities and so on. Are we there? Do we have a stall out with the others? Who does it and how often?
Yeah, we do attend careers events, and our recruitment team are involved. We also, some operational firefighters will get involved in that as well. And, we do try to get in there and talk to people.
Thank you. It's obviously a key issue which we just need to keep working at. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 4 questions. The first one starts on 6.6, and that is to do with the apprenticeship. I'm glad that we're undertaking a review on the effectiveness within the scheme. But do we get a review or an inspection from outside bodies? And also, how many have we got on board now within our apprenticeship scheme?
I can't give you the exact numbers, but we have a number of our firefighters that have been trained through apprenticeship scheme. So certainly for the last few courses, we've been doing that, and they're working their way through at various stages of the apprenticeship scheme. We have people in other departments that have gone through it and are going through it, such as workshops and in our information technology sector. And it is all regulated, and the bodies that oversee it and support it are providing that support. It is something that we're looking to move away from our operational firefighters and move to training our own staff, which won't be under the apprenticeship scheme, but that will relieve some of the burden of the training they're having to do and get them to focus more on the actual operational training we want them to do. But up to this point, all our whole-time operational firefighters have gone through apprenticeship scheme in the last few years.
Do you have another question?
I'll try and make this quick, sorry. If I can actually find it on here. It's at 7.1. It's the collaboration with health, social care and partners. The only thing obviously, I'm sure you have got this under control, but this does worry me with the GDPR, with the data sharing between third parties. Obviously, of individuals aware that this data sharing is going on. I just want to be, feel comfortable that we have got this under control and that we're in compliance with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Our data protection officer has been through it and is comfortable with what we're doing, as is the data protection officer from the organisation that providing the data. So we are absolutely assured ourselves with our legal position on it.
Would you like to add something?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'd also say it's a massive frustration for us as a service, because we know there's information out there about vulnerable people that we can't get access to. And so we are having to rely on various ways to get data. So as an example, we have an arrangement with Anglian Water to provide data on vulnerable people, something that we've recently entered into because it's a better way of getting information than some of our partners, because the complexities of trying to get the information that we need to provide the support that vulnerable people need. So yeah, it's quite a frustration for us. But in terms of, as John said, we comply with all of the requirements that are placed upon us.
This one's 7.5. I'm unable to attend the 23rd of June seminar. So we're being told by government that school fires are very rare, with Home Office data showing that there are fewer than 500 school fires. So this is to do with sprinkler systems. So they're saying that there's fewer than 500 school fires per year. That's with 90% of the fire limited to one room or causing no damage. Kind of in your opinion, would there be benefits in schools to have these sprinkler systems fitted?
Yes, in my professional opinion, there would be a benefit. Unfortunately, schools do tend to be an arson target for various reasons. And the thing with it is that loss of that valuable community piece of infrastructure and the impact that has on the students of that school is that coursework that can be lost for disruption with them having to go to other schools. You only need one fire that takes a part of a school out or a whole school, and the money spent on sprinklers is paid many times over.
So, Councillor, can I just add to that? I think the fire part's one thing, but it's the investigation afterwards. So from a fire investigation perspective, that's a whole building. So if it is arson, like John says, which which is primarily what it's likely to be, then the impact of the whole school is that whole school needs to be isolated while the investigation takes place. So whilst it might be confined to the room of origin, it's a full site survey, if you will, of the incident before you can release it back to school to allow the children back in.
Would you like to jump in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to add to that as well, I mean, it's a while since I've ridden fire engines and I've been to quite a few school fires, and I've seen a number where the fire has been confined to room of origin, but the impact on the school has been quite significant, because it's not normally the fire that creates most damage, it's the smoke and heat that comes from it. And to be fair, the construction of most schools, quite often there's significant damage that creates an impact for months afterwards. So, from our professional perspective, sprinklers would be a good addition, particularly for new schools, relatively low cost when the building is being built, and providing an insurance which may never be called upon, but come the day it is called upon, the impact on the school will be a lot less than it would otherwise be.
Thank you, Chair. I will leave the other one because I think I've hogged the floor for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you. They're all good questions. Councillor Maguire, is there something
Chairman,
you would like to add?
I just want to mention that unless the policy's changed, the policy that Cambridgeshire County Council made years ago was that sprinklers would be fitted into all new builds, and certainly also in any major sort of rebuilds, if you like, if there's been any changes. Now, I haven't followed up on that, but I've made that assumption that any schools, although we don't build very many schools each year, that we do automatic, fit sprinklers into the system. If not sprinklers, then some other suppression system. But I'm fairly sure it's sprinklers. But it might be that this is our chairman of the CYP committee is here. Maybe that's something we can follow up on just in case in future. So whoever ultimately runs that school, as far as we're concerned, any new build should always have sprinklers fitted. And that policy was determined many years ago. I was certainly involved in it. Thank you very much for that context. And perhaps after the meeting, we'll follow up and just check where we are with that policy. As I agree, it is very important. Thank you very much, members. And that was, I think, a really good discussion. Thank you very much, John, for the presentation. Are we all happy to note the contents of that report? Yes. No one unhappy about that? No. Thank you very much. Let us move on to agenda item 7, the outturn revenue and capital budget for the outgoing year and the Treasury management statement. We are asked to note the revenue and capital and Treasury management statement and approve the carry forward. So Matthew, can I hand over to you and assume we've read the report, but perhaps just highlight a couple of things you would like us to pay attention to.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, good afternoon, members. In terms of the last financial year, it was another COVID hit year, so I suppose a little bit different, hopefully, and the last one that we'll see ever in my lifetime, but let's not count our chickens, I suppose. In terms of the last financial year, some oddities that just want to highlight, really. Lots of grants over and above what we were anticipating. Government dished out a little bit more money than we were anticipating. Business rates at the very end of the financial year, we're in a pooling system, which means that we work alongside our county council and district council colleagues, or many of them, whereby we take advantage of, if you like, increases in business rate collection rates. And we had a greater collection than we anticipated through the financial year, which was great. May have been largely in part the government gave businesses grants as well. So it sort of all flows back, but nevertheless, we've been able to benefit from that. In terms of the financial year end position, not too much in terms of significant changes from what I was reporting through the financial year, other than that those additional income streams. And as such, what I'm suggesting in this paper is that we use some of that additional income to create a business continuity reserve from a financial contingency perspective, or for a financial contingency perspective. And that is actually in a paper later on, really, again, just to give us hopefully some leeway when we get there, if we do need to make savings in the future, that we can do in a managed way. So we end the year £35,000 underspent, but that's on the basis that members approve the carry forwards this afternoon that are attached to Appendix 2. In terms of capital financing, just worth highlighting there, we took some debt out earlier in the year, and the predominant reason for that was effectively to support the capital programme and some of the stuff that we have been doing. Vehicles have been a bit of a thorn in our side. We haven't been able to get vehicles in, probably because everybody knows semiconductor issues for whatever reason. We've ordered them, so you'll see in 8.1 the table there, we've got lots of orders, but we haven't been able to pay for any of them because we haven't had them delivered. So other than that, probably the highlights for members this afternoon. In terms of Treasury management, not really a lot to say other than we have debt of 5.7 million and yet we have investments of 8.5 million at the moment. But clearly that investment pool, which effectively is being held to fund St John's, or a large part of that is being held to fund our St John's development that is ongoing. And like the chair said, some of you had the opportunity to visit that site this morning, so you'll see where the money is going, or have seen where the money is going. So I think that's a summary. Any questions that anybody may have?
The Bywater.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Matthew, just a quick question. I was only talking recently to a chief exec of a big leasing company and talking about the problems that leasing companies are getting to supply members of public businesses with vehicles. Is that something we need to put on our risk register going forward?
So our fleet manager at the moment is actively managing that risk. So what we're having to do is keep cars longer than we anticipated, largely. From a I'll call it a red fleet, an appliance perspective, we're okay at the moment. The life of our vehicles is 15 years, and what we're being told is certainly in terms of the orders, they're slipping, but they're not at the moment. It's not a significant risk in terms of they're not being pushed out too far. Clearly, what we're going to keep under review. Because actually, if that does start to push out, a bit like our officer cars, if it starts to push much beyond 4, 5 years, 6 years, we're keeping these vehicles, we start to have significant problems with them, then clearly we're going to have to look at what we do. The issue we've got is we just can't get cars for love nor money at the moment. So our cars are well serviced. We have a high level of availability, 99% availability. So at the moment, I'm not seeing it as an operational risk.
Thank you. Councillor Maguire.
Thank you, Chairman. Through you. Could I just ask Matthew to draw your attention to paragraph 5.3, Matthew, and the last sentence where it says the ongoing impact of our SHQ building not being occupied has reduced energy usage. Now, I don't know if I've lost something along the way, and I'm just puzzled why we're not occupying SHQ. I mean, certainly control presumably is still in there, so but I'm just wondering why other people are not in the.
So this obviously relates to the last financial year, Councillor Maguire. So a large part of this was around the COVID. It's around COVID. It's COVID related. So we didn't have high occupation through that period, particularly over the winter months when obviously we'd be using lots of energy. We didn't have the occupation. We're starting to move back into a position where we have hybrid working, and more people are starting to use the facility again.
It was the fact that it said the ongoing.
Yeah.
I just wondered if, whether it was.
Yeah, and control was always. You're correct though. Control has always been there.
Councillor Taylor.
Sorry, you thought you got away with that, didn't you? No. Okay, I am looking at Appendix 3, 2.21, and it's the investment policy. I just wanted to make sure that being that the authority approved this in February 2018, as it was then the MHCLG, which is now renamed the Department of Levelling Up Houses and Community. Do we know that, is it just the name that's changed, or has any of the guidance in that investment policy changed?
So no guidance or policy has changed with regard to Treasury management.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is helpful to know. Councillor Atkins.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for this report. I just want to, if I can just take a few minutes just to understand a little better the kind of cash and debt balances that the Fire Authority has at the moment and what you're kind of working towards. So you mentioned obviously there's a substantial kind of cash balance at the moment, about 8.5 million, which I think you probably were expecting to have spent by this point based on kind of reports in previous years. What do you see as a kind of sustainable cash balance to be kind of held in perpetuity, as opposed to, you know, what you're intending to spend on the remaining of the refit?
So there's a slight timing issue, Councillor, in terms of the reserve that I want to hold for redevelopment, we'll call it. So what we anticipate is the actual cash balance of about 8.5 million will effectively go down to pretty much zero. But then there'll be a period where we go through a process of selling a couple of sites, which will obviously replenish. I hope to be able to replenish a significant part of that cash balance. So there's going to be a period where actually our reserves go down to effectively what we're suggesting is a general reserve level plus the tactical reserve. And then if members approve in the short term, it will be the business continuity for financial contingency reserve as well. So it'll be around £3 or £4 million we'll be retaining.
So that's a position of 3 or 4 million in cash and what,
Yep.
keeping 5 million or so in debt?
Yeah, the debt position, depending on where we go with the capital programme, will increase, and that's been budgeted for over the coming years as well. So clearly, what we're not doing is paying that debt off. There's 35 years in many cases before we pay some of that off. So it'll be the interest payments that have been budgeted for.
Thank you. Can you just unpack for me the on the revenue side, the debt charges for the year of close to £1 million? Can you just kind of unpack that for me, kind of obviously, you know, with reference to our kind of debt position? I'm not immediately joining all those up.
No, so so effectively that breaks down into what we call revenue contribution to capital outlay. Okay, so there's an RCCO element, which effectively is a revenue element that you use to finance capital expenditure, and that's around about the £600,000 mark. And then on top of that, we have what's called MRP, which is minimum revenue provision, which effectively we have to budget every year to effectively pay back the future debt that we have, so the 5.7 million. And on top of that, we have the interest payments. So there's 3 elements that make that figure up. We can give you the detail, Councillor, if you wish for it.
Yeah, thank you. I think just breaking that out, just understanding a little more those flows from the sort of P&L to the balance sheet in a bit more detail.
Yep.
It's helpful for us to have a really solid understanding of the kind of financial backing of the authority, particularly if the chair and others are off making the case for additional support. We don't want to look like, you know, we're sitting on a massive cash pile.
Absolutely. And if I may, actually, hopefully by the end of this current calendar year, that cash pile will have diminished because of St John's and the building that is going on there. So absolutely. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And in a way, it's a good sanity check for the fresh pair of eyes looking at this to make the connections between the profit and loss, the balance sheet, and so on, make it more obvious how they link up, perhaps.
Can I just make one final comment? It's just because from an authority perspective, you won't be aware, but we've had a significant turnover in finance this year. The team, they're very small. There's only 3 of them. But they've got to a position this financial year where we have finalised all of the accounts. Everything has been done well ahead of anything I've ever seen before. They finished the accounts all done in order, ready for auditors who aren't going to be in for a significant period of time, should we say? But they did it all within 2 months, and it's, I mean, properly astonishing, really, in terms of everything else that's been thrown at them. So I want to add my thanks just on the record for them.
Indeed, thank you. That is an achievement to get the accounts done that quickly. Would you like to add something?
On a different subject area within the report, I just wanted to raise members' attention to paragraph 5.1, where and the helpful chart that's on the in the pack, and it shows our financial establishment for our staff and versus the actual establishment. And so what members will see is that at the beginning, we are significantly over-established. Therefore, we're spending more money than we have budgeted for. And by the end of the year, we have brought that under, which has evened out the spend. The difficulty with this is, of course, if you are underspending, it means you don't have as many people as you would ideally like to run the service. The problem we have as an organisation is it takes us about 9 months to recruit, and we get 1 month, up to 1 month's notice from our frontline staff before they leave. So you'll see the problem we have. So we sort of have to second guess when our staff are coming in. That is a problem, particularly in our current financial position, where we are living effectively from hand to mouth and there is no spare money available to us. So it was raised in the previous IRMP update that we are looking to move towards a more flexible model where we will drip feed people into the organisation. And I guess what we're hoping to see is that will level out the pluses and the minuses, because the problem with being under-established on a very, very tight shift system, which was introduced a number of years ago to ensure that we could make it as effective as possible and be as cost effective as possible, being under-established is a problem for us. So I just wanted to raise that to your attention, because I think it helps to focus minds on the fact that we are not, as an organisation, over-established. We don't have lots of extra people. We are having to very carefully manage the pluses and the minuses to try and maintain an operational service, but we don't have the money available to over-establish just to make it life easy for ourselves. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions about this paper? Councillor Bywater?
Just a quick thought, really, just to come back on what Chris said there in relation to the last paper we looked at, when we're doing 35% more of different services where we're being put under demand from animal rescue, all the other stuff that was listed in the report. Can you give us assurances as members, because ultimately we're looking like a perfect storm coming here if we're under resourced and yet we're getting 35% increase from shared services? Where does that leave us as a service? Is there a perfect storm coming here?
I come back on that.
Of course, yes.
I would say in terms of demand, no, if I'm being honest. And the reason being, we, as a risk-based organisation, we have capacity to deal with demand. So we're nowhere near the level of that capacity. The perfect storm for us, I guess, is more around the funding that we have as an organisation. So the fact that we can't raise enough money now to pay for a realistic pay rise, that's where the perfect storm rises. And I think moving forwards, unless we see some movement on the way that we raise funds to pay for the service, then yes, there is a perfect storm coming.
Thank you. Really important note to conclude on. Any other questions or comments, or shall we move to note the report and approve the carry forward? Is everyone content? No one not content? Thank you. That's noted and carried. Right, we will move to the next item, agenda point 8. This is the business continuity financial contingency plan. Again, Matthew, please assume people have read it, but if you would like to just highlight any points you would like, and we've been asked to note this, and in particular the next steps.
Thank you again, Chair. Yes, I mean, Councillor Bywater's point around the perfect storm, I think this is our preparation for that, what that may or may not look like. So there's lots of work going on in the background. Again, previously, we've had lots of discussions around inflation that, again, it's no surprise to people. It's everywhere at the moment in terms of cost of living. So this really is just our update in terms of progress we've made to date in terms of looking at professional support and such like, and then effectively setting the scene moving forward around how we'll bring all of that information together, because we're not there yet, along with the work that Simon Thompson is leading on, and in November present, if you like, a range of options for the fire authority, get my words out, fire authority, in a effectively prioritised risk-based order. But again, we're not there yet. We're working hard on that, but really it's just making sure that the fire authority are aware of what we are up to.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments? Yes.
Thanks. And just to reiterate, members, so this is in effect good planning. So we have a business continuity plan for a wide range of events. So a business continuity plan for financial difficulty makes absolute sense, and it's something that we will be looking to present on an ongoing basis, so members can be reassured that should the worst event happen, we would be in a position where we could then downscale the organisation if necessary, but still maintain the best service possible within the resources that we have available. So that work's ongoing, and as Matthew said, it will come back to you in November. That said, we do have a weather eye on the current discussions around pay for our staff, because pay agreements are pay is agreed after budget is set. So at the moment we don't have any indication of what the budget impact will be for our grey book staff. So that's our uniformed operational staff. I've not heard any rumours about what that looks like yet, so we don't know what the impact of that could be. We are aware that green book staff, there is a proposal in that relates to an RPI increase plus a number of other areas. But again, that is just the initial submission that has to be worked through. Last financial year, the Green Book budget, the Green Book pay was agreed, I think it was January or February this year. So bearing in mind, that was last June it went in. Last year, the Grey Book staff was agreed probably around July time. At the moment, we don't know when that'll happen. So, you know, if there's an agreement that comes in earlier and it impacts on our finances, we will of course be coming back to members earlier than November to talk to you. If it doesn't, we'll be coming to you in November anyway, just to outline what the business financial continuity plan looks like moving forward, and that will be presented on a regular basis.
Thank you, that's helpful. Extra points about the process. Do you have questions or comments? Councillor Kindersley.
Thank you, Chair. I think of all the items on our agenda this afternoon, this is probably the most concerning. And I commend, obviously, the senior management team for having an eye to the future and setting in place preparations for a way of dealing whatever that future holds. But the bottom line is that, and this refers back to the point I made earlier on about whether all of our Cambridgeshire and indeed Peterborough MPs had responded to your letter. It's very disappointing that clearly some of them haven't. And it is in their hands to do something about this. They are the parliamentarians, they are part of government, a lot of them. And the bottom line comes down to two things: our settlement from government and the way we're allowed to increase council tax. So I think it's very sensible. I'd like scrutiny and overview to have a look at it, if possible. And I commend the worrying report.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Was that a hand? No. Thank you. In that case, absolutely, this is a really important paper and an even more important process. And I'm grateful for the points about accelerating the timetable depending on what information we receive. As soon as we know what the position is, we'll bring forward the information to the authority. And indeed, oversight and scrutiny can also participate in scrutinising this. So we have been asked to note the progress and the actions. Is everyone content to do that? Yes. No one unhappy about that prospect? Thank you. That is noted. Thank you very much. And now we'll move to item 9 on the agenda, the relocation of Papworth to Camborne, community fire station, the update. Please, John, assume we have read the report. we've been asked to note the report and approve the proposal to sell the site. Thank you.
Chair, Area Commander Stuart Smith will be presenting the paper today.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so as the Chair says, I assume you've read the paper, but I'll take you through the highlights. So from the last meeting, we were asked to continue our engagement with our Papworth and Camborne residents, and that's what we've done. So some highlights, we went to both parish councils, sat in front of those meetings and discussed the changes and the rationale for why we were going to do what we were going to do. We sent letters out to both Papworth homes and Camborne homes, more importantly in Camborne, with the recruitment message to continue our promotion to recruit on-call firefighters in the Camborne area, continuing to engage through our social media channels. And we got some really good engagement, some questions that were raised and we were able to answer and generate some conversation on our social media channels, which was good. As importantly, continue to reassure those vulnerable residents in those areas. As we said earlier, we've got a decent idea of where those vulnerable residents are, and our community safety officers have been out in those areas providing reassurance, especially in Papworth, with the thought that the fire station is moving to Camborne. And we had a real successful event before Papworth moved over to Camborne with their last drill night in inviting residents of Papworth to attend. And for those of you that were seeing the pictures on social media of that event, it looked really well attended and was well supported by the residents of Papworth. So I'm pleased to say the move took place to Camborne on the 3rd of May on their final drill night from Papworth, and all of our staff that are currently at that fire station moved across to the Camborne site, and they've settled in really well there. And at the time of writing the report, they had attended 9 incidents from that location. We continue to work hard to recruit from the Camborne area, and that work is underway, and I've been assured that there are a number of candidates from Camborne in our on-call recruitment process, which is great news. The final part really is the sale of the site. Matthew, I don't know whether you want to touch on this before we take questions.
Yeah, can do. So in terms of we've sought advice in terms of the site and its potential, and what we're being recommended is that in September, effectively, we go through an auction process on the site. We invite offers over and above a certain figure that could have effectively, it could be higher than my delegated powers, and hence the reason why I brought it here, just to make sure that I don't want to give a figure here, obviously for obvious reasons, but nevertheless we've had interest in the site. So my recommendation is, again, the company that have recommended have sold the police site in Papworth as well, so they've got some experience of doing so, and they maximise the value of that site. So hopefully we'll get a positive outcome that exceeds what we wish to.
Thank you very much. Comments, questions? I'm looking at Councillor Smith. Nothing. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Ray.
Could I ask a question as a newbie to this committee? So if you have an auxiliary fire station like that, how many people do you need to have around in order to be sure that you have a quorum number of people to man the fire engine?
Do you want me to go for that?
Sorry?
12 to 15 is the ideal. So in old money, we would employ people on what's called 3/4 rate or full rate. So 3/4 rate, they'll be available for 3/4 of the time. And you need about 15 people to provide the 100% availability for one appliance spread across the 24-hour period. As a service, we struggle to get anywhere near that number. So to a great extent, we rely on the community spirit of our people, because we don't so much struggle to recruit, we struggle to retain our on-call staff, because the reality is it's not as busy as some would like, I guess. So the stations that are busy, we have no problems. The stations that aren't, we struggle to retain staff. So ideally 12, but the reality is not in our service. Very few stations have got that number.
Okay, and how far away are they able to be working or living?
So we set a standard of around 4 minutes for them to get from wherever they are into the station. But there are some stations where we've extended that. So certainly Papworth, because we had people coming into Papworth from Camborne, we extended up to 7 minutes, I believe. Blimey, I know such. Don't know how I remember this stuff, but yeah, so it's 7 minutes. Which is unusual because ideally you want people living close to the station, because obviously the longer it takes them to get to the station, the shorter the distance they can then travel within your attendance standard time.
Okay, so that enables you to then have the 12-minute response time that you're achieving.
Yeah, but to be fair though, as time goes on, because the on-call system is struggling, we do struggle to provide a good quality service during the day. It's not so difficult at night. We are being increasingly flexible with that. So we do look at where necessary, extending times for people to get in, because I think, you know, ultimately getting a fire engine is better than not getting one at all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor Slatter.
Yes, just an onlooker's response to that. I mean, it clearly is a tremendous commitment to be on call. You know, you barely got time to go to the loo, it sounds to me. And so we don't want to have unrealistic response times written down and set in stone. That is just unhelpful, isn't it? Because I don't know whether that is part of it, that, you know, recruiting and then finding that it's a tremendous tie down on what you can do with your time, and yet you're not really at work. So it's a big ask that we have people like this on call, and I think we need to recognise that and not make it too difficult. And I'm sure the people who are phoning for the fire engine would understand that.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, there's a balance that we need to strike. The fire service is set up on the basis of speed of attack and weight of response. So speed of attack is really important, and that's because we know, particularly for incidents that involve life risk, the sooner you can get to the scene, the more likely it is you'll have a positive outcome. Unfortunately, we don't get the outcomes we'd seek on a lot of occasions. And so therefore, watering down that aspect of our emergency work would be a challenge, I think, and would require us to accept, in effect, that we won't be as successful as we currently are. So we do need to strike the balance. But as I said, it's not no fire appliance. It's if we have an appliance, say, I don't know, Soham, for example, and the reason it's in Soham is because in that area, we need to have a response within a certain amount of time. So we recognise that if we can't get enough people, then a fire appliance would have to come from somewhere else and take even longer. And of course, if it's a life risk situation, then the chances of success in that situation are diminished. So there's always a balance for us to strike, I guess. So we believe that the times that we set are appropriate for the job that we're trying to do.
Yes, and I think I would very much endorse those comments as well. However, I think, Councillor Slatter, you really have put your finger on it when you said it's a big ask. It really is a big ask, but it's also a really important life-saving function. So we do need to be transparent about, record the information of our efforts and work hard to keep them good and try to improve them if we can. So I think that is part of the intrinsic challenge of this role. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you. So we've been asked to note the work that's been done and approve the proposal to sell the site. Yes, are we content? Yes. Thank you very much. Duly noted. So agenda item 10, Programme Management Monitoring Report. Again, assume we've read it, Matthew, and we've been asked to note the report. Perhaps you'd like to highlight aspects.
Thank you, Chair. So just, I suppose, just looking at the reds really, if you've got colour, if not, it'll be very dark greyish, I think. In terms of the replacement mix and mob system, we continue to work with our new supplier, which they're located in France. That has created some significant challenges for us through COVID. Effectively, since we started, we were in lockdown. Obviously, many of you will be aware that travel was restricted from France for a significantly longer period than we'd have hoped. So it's only now really we're actually getting to grips with some of the more complex issues that we need to deal with. Things are starting to move, but it is behind schedule. Our current system is holding up, so that's reassuring. But we are working with Sistel to effectively come up with what's called a minimum viable product now. So this is just effectively a business continuity arrangement again to make sure that if anything did happen to our current system, we could continue to function. So that's effectively what we are doing, but we're working hard, and the team are working really hard to move that product forward. We've spoken about ESMCP. You're aware of the operational, the review of operations project that Chris is a sponsor for and Simon's leading, and you're aware of the Huntingdon Fire Station and Training Centre project. So other than that, I wasn't going to raise anything specifically.
Right, are there any questions or comments? Thank you. So we've been asked to note the report. Everyone content to do that? Thank you. This report obviously comes back frequently, so we will see the next iteration at the next meeting. If we can turn now to agenda item 11, appointments to committees and outside bodies. Can I please hand over to Dawn?
Thank you, Chair. I've liaised with the political group leaders prior to the publication of the agenda. There's just one minor change to the appointments, and that's appointing Councillor Atkins to the places vacated by Councillor MacDonald. Since the agenda has been published, it has been flagged up to me by Combined Authority colleagues that we are entitled to appoint a substitute to the Combined Authority in addition to Councillor Murphy. So I don't know whether Councillor Murphy would like to say something about that.
Yes, this is a non-voting place on the board of the Combined Authority, which meets increasingly frequently and is there to discuss really strategic development issues for the sub-region. And we've been made aware that it is possible to have a substitute for me, and I'm proposing that on occasions when I can't make it, that we send Councillor Jamil instead. Is everyone happy with that, especially Councillor Jamil? Thank you. Thank you. Well, with that, I believe that is the... Oh, yes, of course. I'm so sorry. Yes, so we... Yes, we need to appoint the chairs of the committees and note that the Policy and Resources Committee so the Policy and Resources Committee is nominated to be chair is Councillor Goodliff. Any seconder? Thank you, Councillor Jamil. Are there any other nominations for chair of the committee? Thank you. You are appointed for the year. And vice chair, would you like to nominate?
Could I nominate Councillor Jamil, please?
And do we have a seconder? Councillor Slatter. Do we have any other nominations for vice chair? Nope. Thank you. Thank you very much. Nomination for chair of oversight and scrutiny. Yes, Councillor Kindersley is nominated. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Do we have any other nominations? Thank you very much. You are so duly appointed for the year. Would you like to nominate your vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Jamil. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? No, thank you very much. You are duly nominated for vice chair for the year. Thank you. I do believe we are at the end of our agenda, and so that concludes our meeting. Thank you very much for attending.